Okay, let me get the old screen share up here. And let's see, did that get my Whisper program up there? Everybody see that?
Yeah,
Okay.
see it.
Okay, let me, come on, where is that? Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about a little bit about beaconings. And before we get into that, I wanted to mention a couple of things. The 7QP contest, that's May 7th. We have an expedition going out to the Ochocos, and that has all been activated. We've got our permission from Forest Service to use the site that we've used before, so that's moving ahead. Anybody else that wants to join it, just send me a piece of meat. Let's see, whoever's doing the hard coughing, could you kind of mute your microphone there? So
I am bringing extra radios to 7QP, so if you don't have a radio but still would like to participate, please come, because I will have at least one extra radio that you'll be able to operate.
Great, great. So that's moving along real well. The next thing is this coming weekend. This weekend that's coming up is the CQ WPX contest. If anybody likes to chase down DXCC entities or work different countries or grid squares, that is a great contest to get involved with. The bands have been quite good, relatively speaking, this past almost month now. It's been up and down and stuff like that. Yesterday, it was kind of on the downside. To this morning when things started up, it started getting better and better. And I noticed that 15 meters is still open tonight, which is quite unusual. So there's a lot of good band activity. And I think this coming weekend is going to be really stellar for people that like to work DX. So please get involved with that if you'd like. So this evening, I'm going to be talking about Whisper and going to be talking about beaconing systems. So Whisper is kind of a subset of a beacon system, and we'll find out how a beacon system works. So as far as topics, we're going to be talking, what is a beacon? Why is it important to ham radio operators? We're going to talk about Whisper and why it's important for hams. We're going to talk about some applications for being able to use Whisper. And there's another Whisper. The way it kind of works is very similar to FT8. And we'll be kind of comparing two different reporting systems out there called PSK Reporter for FT8 and Whisper Net for the Whisper system. So to start off with is, what is a beaconing system? A device that makes a fixed location, or that marks a fixed location and allows direction finding equipment. Still got someone that has their mic open. I think, Andrew, do you still have your mic open there? That you could kind of close the mic. So let me back up here again. So it's a device that marks a fixed location and allows direction finding equipment to find a relative bearing. Well, that's not in the context of what we consider a direction or a beacon out there. So let's talk about what really makes a beacon for ham radio operator. So radio beacon, whose purpose is to investigate, is the investigation of propagation of radio signals around the world. That's us. So that's what we're looking for, is something that helps us to understand and see what we have for propagation for our radio signals. So beacons, these little transmitters, can be found on virtually every single ham frequency that we can possibly have out there. And they are just scattered all over the world. You can do a little bit of Googling there, and you can find out where these locations are. So there's many different kinds of implementations for these various beacons. Some of the older type of beacons are actually at fixed locations around the world. You can find their website and where they are and what frequencies that they service. They're a simple transmitter. That includes their call sign. Sometimes they will vary. They'll also some of them will also include their grid square, and some of them will also vary the transmission power. So like at quarter or past the hour, they'll have half power at 45 minutes after the hour, then they may have eighth power, something like that. So it's kind of interesting, some of these different kind of beaconing systems, how they may change the power. That helps you understand on the receiving end to figure out if you can hear them. So on these kinds of systems, it's up to the receiving stations to determine the value of the information being received by these beacons. But it will give you location information, what frequency it's on, the distance to the beacon, and it will provide you a bearing. And I guess I kind of refer to that generically, all of that wrapped up into one thing. What we care is the path, what direction we point our beam, and what frequency that we want to be in. So why do I care about these darn beacons? Well, it all comes down to propagation, the behavior of radio waves as they travel around the Earth. And so that gives us a path that tells us where to point our beam and what frequency that it's on. For hams, for ham radio operators, it's all about propagation. That's what we care about. When we're trying to work DX, we want to know where we can talk to, if that's going to cover the countries, going to cover the continents, cover the area that we're most interested in. So knowing what the propagation is, knowing that path is going to tell us where to end up pointing our antennas. So an interesting thing is that science does not give us absolute laws that define the behavior of propagation. Propagation generally is kind of unpredictable. Now, granted, we do have such things as far as sunspot numbers, solar flux index, wind, solar wind. So there's all this scientific information that gives us some ideas about what's going on, but it just doesn't tell us. It's not an absolute law, or it's not an absolute set of physics. There's still a lot that we don't know about. And you really have to get on the air or use some tools to find out where there's activity and where you need to go to find that activity. I talk about where to go, that's what frequency, and where to point your antenna. So beacons help us to understand the location, the frequency, the distance, and bearing of the traveling wave across the country. That gives us the path that it's going across. We like to use scientific methods to determine if we have good or bad propagation. So in other words, we want to be on 20 meters, we want to talk to Europe. Well, scientific methods, it'll help give you general ideas, but it still doesn't give us absolute information. As I previously mentioned, for propagation using a scientific method, we would normally look at solar flux indexes, we look at sunspot numbers, we look at solar wind, and there's a bunch of other different kinds of indices that we end up looking at that will give us a general idea of what we might be able to expect, but it's not an absolute. Scientific method does not always give you a complete and accurate picture of the propagation. In order to do that, you really need real data. You need real-time data to figure out what's going on. There's another type of system called reverse beacon network. And again, what it is that you already have beacons around the country. Now you add in listening stations. Rather than you having to do the listening yourself, you're going to use this network out there to see what these different listening stations are telling you as far as their ability to receive things. So these are generally ham stations that are out there listing for things such as people calling CQ on CW, PSK, RTTY, and also the host of FT8 and JT65 type of stuff. So these are, virtually all digital modes, but these give you some kind of basic idea of getting on this network to see where you have propagation. The nice thing is that as all this information is listened to, it gets converted into digital information and then sent off to a place called PSK Reporter. And I think I mislabeled that. I think that's org, not info. But it goes off to this wonderful database warehouse where we can go and look this information up and helps us figure out where there's propagation going on. So that's very, very, very helpful, but it doesn't give us the whole picture. That gives us pictures of these reporting stations and these beaconing stations of where they could hear each other. It doesn't tell us about us, where we are in this world, what antenna we're using, where we have our antenna directed. It doesn't tell us about our specific location, what we can actually receive. So along comes another product called WSPR, and that stands for Weak Signal Propagation Reporter. This has been around for quite a while. There's all kinds of hardware, software products, kits out there that are built to support this WSPR type of networking system. So it's a protocol designed for probing potential propagation paths. So it goes out there and it'll transmit these weak signals. And there's a section on almost every single ham band. There's a little small sliver out there that that's set aside for all these beacons. And so they get to use that pretty much unrestricted. So they use low power transmitters. Messages carry the transmitted station's call sign, the call sign of the transmitter, and that's normal. Any transmitter that you have out there always has to have a call sign associated with it. Has grid square location, and it also includes the transmit power. So whatever the transmitting power that it's sending out, it includes that information in dBWs. Actually, I think it's dB milliwatts. No, excuse me, no, dBW. It's just in dBW. So there's lots of different forms of it, of WSPR. WSPR, one of them, if you have the transmitter set up to transmit every 2 minutes, 2-minute sequences, it can decode the guy on the far end that's looking for these 2-minute sequences. It can decode whatever signal he's receiving clear down to a -31 dB. We know like FT8, the best it can do is decode down to about -24. So this gives a significantly lower noise floor that it can decode it out of, but also it has a lot more time and it can spend a lot more computer energy trying to decode this particular digital signal. If you have like a 30-minute decode sequence, you can get all the way down to -45 dB. I consider that pretty much insane. I mean, it'd be like, it was no way that a human could, either one of these, a human could not discern that there is a transmitting signal. And it's only out of mathematical computations that you can actually pull that out. So we're assuming here that these receivers typically are connected up to the internet, and everything that it finds and decodes, it'll send it off to a database, a central database called WSPRnet. So WSPRnet provides, if you go onto their website there, that network provides, or that website provides mapping, so you can see where all the different kinds of devices are being transmitted and where it's being heard. There's archiving information, so you can dig through some of the archives and figure out a little bit of historical information on what's going on. So, WSPR applications. So I mentioned that hardware. There's a whole bunch of hardware out there that that supports WSPR. Lots of cool little kits out there for building transmitters and transceivers. There's also a whole host of legacy applications out there that also runs WSPRs. So WSPR basically sends a beacon that transmits out from your station, with whatever kind of device you're using there. Some other station is going to receive that beacon. It'll decode that information and then ship it through the internet to the WSPR net, where a person can look at the database or look at it on a map and actually see what information looks like. So this is what the WSPRnet.org looks like, and that looks like a whole lot of information. But the neat thing is that there's all kinds of different filters that you can kind of turn on, and you can whittle this down to look at just exactly what you want and end up looking for. And as you see to Europe here, there's nothing that's on the West Coast that's getting into Europe. Everything is East Coast getting into Europe there. And we'll get into a little bit more of this stuff. Okay. So I know that everybody here has had some experience with good old FT8 and predecessor, the JT65 stuff, and also PSK Reporter. So all of this that I'm talking about here, when I'm talking about WSPR, it smells like and it sounds pretty much like FT8. So since about 2018, WSPR has actually, that protocol has been incorporated in the JT65X application. That's the same application that we use for FT8. All you have to do is go up to the top of the form there, select mode, and down towards the bottom, it has WSPR. And you can take that same application and you can run it in WSPR. Pretty cool, right? So this is a screenshot of what WSJTX looks like running WSPR. Left side is the waterfall that we're all accustomed to looking for. The right side is the slimmed down view of all the stations that are being received there. And it will also drop in markers in there telling you when it transmits. You have the ability to do band hopping on this. There's all kinds of really super neat features wrapped up into it. But again, it's a form that we're all accustomed to looking for. So there's nothing here that should really look very alien. You just know I need a little information on some rules on how to operate it. So mentioned about how to enable WSPR on JT X application. But this time I'm not going to bore you all with how to end up configuring this. I mean, we very easily can just jump on Google, do some searching for WSPR and WSJTX, and you can read through it. There's some great videos, tons of information on how to run this thing. So what I'm going to do is just run through some of the key features, just a high level type of stuff, so you get some of the benefits out of it. So for WSPR, the bandpass for WSPR is only 200 hertz wide. You have to think about that. It's just not very often that you run anything where that's 200 hertz wide. The actual bandwidth for a transmitter on WSPR is only 6 hertz wide. So you can put a ton of different WSPR guys in that in that 200 hertz bandpass. So you get some ideas. Just a little tiny sliver, takes up practically no room out there. You're not required to do any transmitting if you want to just be a receive station and see who you can receive and log those. That's not a problem. You can enable it for doing spotting on the Whisper net. That's actually a tick box to do. The transmit power, you need to figure out what you actually have for transmit power. So you can read through the rules there, but you need to look and see what your transmitter is doing and what your gain is on your power, on your antenna that you're running, and what your coax losses are. Then you can go ahead and figure out what your actual transmit power is going to be. So that information needs to be part of the configuration process. The neat thing is you can select how often you want to transmit. You can also configure it for band hopping. So if you want to see what the heck's going on 20, 15, and 10 meters, you can configure it to band hop between all of those individual bands. And I showed you on the previous screen on the right side there, there's a log there of everything that you transmitted and every station you receive. So you can look at the timestamps and you can figure out, so you can start this thing up at night, before you go to bed. This thing here, like think about a nighttime band, 80 meters and 160 meters. You want to find the best time to try and figure out when to get into Europe or Africa. And you can run this thing to hop between 80 meters and 160 meters and figure out, well, does it make sense for me I'm seeing all these European stations that are coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning. If I really want to get those guys on 80 meters or 160 meters, well, I'm going to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and work these guys. So you can find out, yo.
Yeah, just question. It said not required to transmit, and I'm actually one of those few people in the hobby who hasn't tried this, I guess. But does this mean that you can take credit for a contact if you do, or is this just a beacon only type situation where it's helpful to know where the propagation is?
Good question. Good question. Beacons, no credit. You get absolutely no credit whatsoever. All this is a tool. It's a tool that helps you in your quest and your hunting of trying to find those rare stations and knowing when to be on the band at the right time to make those.
So you made a good point about using theory, and this is more practice, right? And so this is where theory meets practice. You can do all the calculations you want with the sunspots and everything else, and not to dissuade all of those calculations, because they are good predictions. But this is a good, hey, is my prediction worthwhile today at this time, right?
I'll explain a little bit different way, is that with the prediction, it will say, hey, at nighttime, you're probably going to be able to get into Europe on 160 meters, probably. This guy here will give you the proof of the pudding that says, okay, it's really worth dragging my back end out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, crawling in, firing things up, and these guys are going to be there, because every single night for that week, and there hasn't been any CMEs or hasn't been anything to disrupt the ionosphere. So pretty darn well that you're going to be able to make it into Europe on 160 meters at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Nice. So it's a confidence factor.
Well, it's more than that. This proof.
Yeah.
It's a proof to a theorem.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. So all of this stuff gets logged that you can physically look at it yourself to figure out, if you have things enabled to go on and to be reported on the web station there, the Whisper net, then you can also mine the stuff that you reported out there and mine other people's stuff that's in your area. So the other good cute thing is that this thing will show grid square information to 6 digits, not the 4 digits. So 6 digits get you into your neighborhood, where 4-digit grid squares, well, that'll get you into a county, maybe. But 6 digits is going to get you into what area within your county. I have to make a big deal out of the 6 digits. That's a lot more accuracy than the 4 digits. Means a whole lot here. So it'll also give you your distance and also your bearing on where that station is located at. They have a really cool scheduler in there. So you can select what bands that you want to end up using. You can select the time of day, like if you want to be on there at gray line for sun up or gray or sundown. You can identify that you only want to collect data for daytime or for nighttime on any particular band. And you can also set it up where you can receive only, set up certain times where you only want to end up receiving information out there. Okay. This is just another screenshot of that darn band. I wish I had enough time to put in some filters and skinny this thing down here so you could have seen a little bit more information on here, but you got plenty of filters in there to pull things apart. So, oh, here we go. Yeah, WhisperNet. So gives you a good old map, all the activity around the world. See it in an instant, see what's going on. Filters by station, by band, by time. The lines on the map give you some idea of the great circle curve that you're getting as far as propagations, what things are being tied together. The use of the database table to look up more detailed information. If you click on the little stations, it kind of says, okay, who's receiving it? It doesn't give you a whole lot of information like PSK Reporter does. So in order to dig into it, as far as signal strength and more detailed as far as what's being received there, you really have to go into the database and do your own little mining there. And they got some great filters to end up pulling that information up. And if you really want to get some cute things, you can look activity, you can see what stations around the world there are actually connected up. They have a whole bunch of neat statistics there to look at that'll kind of amaze you as far as who's reporting what and looking at all kinds of great stuff. So let's talk about strategy. Paul actually jumped into strategy kind of at the beginning, a little bit at the beginning there. And so how you're going to use it. So one of the points that I want to make real strongly is that this whole concept of beacons, there is nice information, but you got to make it relative or to you. How does it affect you? I want to know what my station is doing. I want to know what my antenna is doing. I want to know what's happening at my QTH. It's nice to see what's going on, 50 miles down the road, but I know 50 miles down the road there where some other station is receiving things doesn't represent what I'm able to receive. So it's important for me to know what's happening at my station on my antennas. It also, just like a PSK Reporter, it's also a pretty good use in the transmit options there, or even on the receive. But if you want to test out a new antenna, do A/B comparisons between two or three different antennas that you might have there. It's a good way of doing that testing, and you can do virtually the same thing on PSK Reporter. So I mentioned like if guys are working, the big buzzword, I'm finding lots of guys on lots of different clubs that are really busy working on their worked all states. Matter of fact, I just got my stuff in from ARL. I applied for 9-band worked all states, and I got all my paperwork and stuff I need to get it mounted up for work, and all my little gold stickers, stuff like that for 9-band TX. So I made that happen. Oh, thank you, Paul. So if you're working, right now, because bands have been really poor on 10 meters and 12 meters, everybody's busy working 10 and 12 meters here on the West Coast, and nobody can get Montana, Idaho, or New Mexico. Nobody, I mean, and so everybody's been struggling trying to do that. So you can set things up and say, hey, I want to end up with Whisper there. I want to see when I'm going to end up, when's the best time to work Montana, Idaho, or New Mexico. And so that ends up giving you a clue on when to get your back end on the air, come out from weeding the garden or whatever you're doing, and get on the air on 10 or 12 meters and nail those last 2 or 3 stations that you need for worked all states. Or if you're a DX hound, you want to know when's the best time to, on 20 meters, to work Europe, Africa, or Asia. You can also set things up same old way. Take a look, and it comes back, and you can look to see when all the activity is really, really busy to Europe. So right now, 20 meters has been waking up probably about 6 in the morning. And so right about, for us, about 9 o'clock is when Europe is probably getting into the strongest. So 9 to 10, 9 to probably 10:30 is the best time to work into Europe on 20 meters at this point in time. So that'll help answer those clues. Africa, I haven't seen anything really good from Africa at this point in time.
So Mike, you said the Whisper Net, and I may have missed one subtlety here. Did you say that that's a push service that allows you to be told, or do you have to go check it like a poll?
No, you're gonna pull. That's all mine that gets stored there in the database, and you have to pull it.
Okay.
Now also now that's one way of doing it. You also, on your screen, you have that log information that you can go back and pilfer through to figure out the same kind of stuff. You have all the raw data there. It's just that you don't have the better tools to do that like you can on the net, on WhisperNet. Okay, let's wrap this guy up here. So ham radio operators always want to know about propagation. When is there a RF path open to a state, to a count, to a country, to some DX entity, or to some continent out there? Everybody, because nobody likes to waste their time in, this immediate gratification. I don't like sitting around waiting for that stuff to come to me. You have to know when you can go out and go after these particular entities to take and get things locked. So we all know the scientific method. It doesn't always work to predict propagation accurately. So how can we get real-time data about RF paths and propagation to know when it's open? Well, the beaconing system gives us some real-time information on what's going on. Oops. Trying to scroll things up, and it doesn't really scroll very well. So reverse beaconing system, that's basically these various stations out there, or ham radio stations set up to record when they're receiving these various fixed beacons out there. And the next extension and that's also in real time. The next extension of that is good old, well, I guess I got one more note here. So fixed location beacons help, but does not give me data about my exact location. So that's the bullet there about, I want to know about my house, my antenna, my equipment. I want to know what's going on with that, where I'm going to receive things. So Whisper and WSP RNet helps to provide worldwide real-time data about transmission receiving to from our locations using the beacon system. It also is incorporated for Whisper. So WSP or WSJTX using the WSPR option. That application provides many, many features that help you improve your odds of you communicating with that with the world, with those stations out there that you want to end up talking to. So this is the end of my program here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So no
Mike?
questions?
Well, actually, just one quick question. It doesn't have to be long, but you must have used this yourself to be able to present this. How did you find it? Was it valuable? Something we should check into? Or is it just mildly interesting and experimental?
No, it's very good. The thing that gives you better results is the scheduling. Because I'm curious on certain bands, what continents I'm going to get to. And you don't have the kind of filtering, you don't have the kind of tools that you have on the other website, come on.
PSK Reporter.
Yeah, PSK Reporter. There we go. PSK Reporter. You don't have the same kind of tools that you have on PSK Reporter. This stuff here gives you a lot better tool to kind of mine the stuff and to figure out where and what's coming in from those particular locations. So it's a different set of tool sets because you've got a different purpose there. Now, PSK Reporter is intended just for logging to give you credit for making those contacts, which doesn't give you a whole lot of great information as far as where the kinds of stations that you're actually receiving things from. So that's why. Does that kind of answer what you're looking for?
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
I want to know if it makes any sense for me to get up out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning to take and come down here to hunt for something on 80 meters or 160 meters.
Right. Yeah, there's the return on investment right there.
That's right, because my time is valuable. You know, I don't, like for me, I don't know exactly when my expiration date's coming up, but I know that statistically it's got to be coming up pretty darn soon. So my time and effort, what I do, I have to be very, very cautious or very, very frugal on where I invest my time. This is very expensive to me right now.
Oh, now you'll be in Ocho coming back.
Yeah. Also right now, that little shack behind me, that's a chapel down on Cape Hope. That is the most northern point in South America. Right behind me, behind that little shack there, that little chapel, is a monument for Cape Hope. It's a big, huge steel thing that just got ripped up with over 200-mile-an-hour winds that came through there that just took that huge steel monument and shredded it. Also, I guess one other point I'll make there is that off to the left there is the actual guard station there for that area. So that's Chile. Yeah, Chilean. That's a Chilean guard station. They have a map there hanging up on the wall there that shows, it's a nautical map that shows all the area of the little islands down around there. And it shows a ship out there with a red X through it for every ship that had gone down trying to go around the horn here. And actually not the Cape here. And so you start looking at counting that, and it's like, there's not just hundreds, there's just not several hundreds. It ranks in the thousands of ships that went down trying to make that passage. And then you start thinking about, okay, what did it take to make that ship? What was the cargo that was on the ship? What were all the men that were lost in that? And it's a very somber thought to consider that all the thousands of ships that went down, without the multi-thousands of people that went down, all the cargo and all that investment that had gone down over the ages. That's why finding the Magellan Strait was so important. Made a big difference. Okay, that's the end of that. Any other questions about that? About the
Very cool. And how many of those were divers looking for things that were lost from previous shipwrecks, and then they ended up losing their own lives, right?
that area between the Cape there down to Antarctica is the worst seas in the world. There is no diving. There is no type of work that you do down there. It's scurry to get across it as fast as you can. When we came up from Antarctica, we had 40-foot waves. Nobody was allowed onto the bow there. And I have to say that it's a couple of times I woke up in the middle of the night there and I was levitating above the bed. The bed had moved away from me.
Wow.
Isn't it amazing that Shackley, his crew, they did that essentially in real large rowboats?
Yeah, Shackleton. Yep.
Shackleton, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, when he went from Elephant Island there up to South Georgia, that was almost 800 nautical miles there. And he did that in those kinds of seas, getting bounced around with a large rowboat. And I mean, that was like, you talk about threading the eye of a needle with a piece of thread. That was even better than that because all they had was a Stetson for taking navigation. And as they came into the actual South Georgia island, the rudder off of the back of the boat broke off. And they drifted into this little bay. And as they drifted in, their broken rudder actually floated in with them.
Hey, Mike, I think if you charted the next islands on the air down to Antarctica, we should all join you. And we should.
That is an expensive trip too. Okay, any other questions out there? I'll just mention next month I will not be here. Scott is going to sub in my place. So please provide him as much respect as you do with me or better. But anyway, hope this was interesting. This is something I had always wanted to do, but I didn't feel like it. I was going to be able to represent it quite well enough for doing beaconing and whisper and what it all meant for. But I thought it was about time to talk about that because right now we have a lot of stuff coming online as far as good DXing. I mean, some incredible stuff. I've been pretty active. I would say in this last month, even last 3 weeks, I've added over 6 new DX entities to my DXCC out there. And right now I'm working on trying to get my 5-band DXCC, still a ways off, but I had 40 meters that I got over the 100 mark. And I have 17 meters that's just about to go over that 100 too.
I decided in order to anger all of my, East Coast and Central Time Zone workers, the co-employees, I am going to get my Worked-All prefectures just to make them all jealous about just, how easy it is to fall into a pile of JA contacts here on the West Coast since they tease me about getting into Europe on a regular basis. So I figure turnabout's fair play. But yes, you can apply for JARL awards as a US operator if you'd like. And there's actually a lesser one that's worked all call areas. So if you get one in each of 0 through 9 of the JA areas, then you can get a nice looking certificate too. They're actually cool looking certs.
Yeah, I've mentioned that, did a program there showing that for awards that we keep focusing in on all the ones that we have from the ARL and within the US, but there are hundreds and hundreds of other award systems for international. I keep getting invited to the Polish contests that they have over there. So I'm constantly getting invites for that stuff.
All right. Well, speaking of East Coast, I am way past my bedtime. So thank you. We'll get that later. I'll see you in the Pacific time zone.
Okay.
Soon.
Enjoy your beauty suit sleep. You really need it.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm at the sleep.
Take care, Paul.
Bye-bye.
Good night, Paul.
Take care. Thank you, Mike.
Welcome, guys.
Yes, thanks everybody for meeting tonight. Thanks, Mike, for beacons. It's actually one of the things I used to do at the OSU club is I would go in to the shack to do homework. And so while I was working on homework, I'd set up Whisper and just listen on Whisper for an hour or so while I was doing homework, and then go see what the results were and play on the radio based on what I
There-
saw.
Tapper actually sells some interesting kits. They're a Raspberry Pi hat that you drop onto it, and it actually uses I think it's the PWM pins on the Raspberry Pi. It just adds some filters in them and things like that, and allows you to put a really low power Whisper beacon on the air without any other sort of transceiver to it. You just hook up an antenna and go. They're pretty tiny, and yeah, and they cost like 10 or 15 bucks a piece. So for 50 bucks, you can make a single band Whisper transmitter, add your own antenna. If anybody's extremely interested, I think I have one kicking around that I can either bring, or, you know, the chances of me actually using it in the next 10 years are low. So if you're going to make use of it, I might be convinced to part with it. I think it's a 20-meter model. You know, I have so many unfinished projects that you can see in the background that, you know, I have stuff for.
I got several tote bags full of unfinished projects too. I mean, or at least get it to work at some point. And there's always some little stumbling block that just it's kind of hard to engineer around.
I'm actually pretty happy. One of my latest projects was, you know, kind of ham radio related, in that I bought some Pelican cases so that I can put my radios in there for 7QP. And I made some, actually, they turned out pretty well, pockets to Velcro to the outside of the Pelican cases for like cables and stuff like that, that you don't necessarily care that you go into the padded section or whatever. I kind of modeled them off of a bag that went on the top of one of my HP oscilloscopes. So, and it works out pretty well. So. If people see them at 7QP and are interested, I'm happy to share patterns that I used.
Okay, cool.
I drafted them on a pattern CAD program on my Mac. So.
I knew there had to be a computer somewhere in there.
There's actually an open source pattern making program that's out there that's cross-platform on Mac and Windows. And yeah, so yeah, it does nice things like it will tile your pattern amongst multiple letter size sheets so that you can cut them out and tape them together in order to make a larger pattern.
Wow,
Works
that's
pretty
cool.
well.
Well, anything else, guys, or else I'm gonna head off and get something to eat here.
No, I'm really excited for 7QP, obviously. So yeah, I'm
Ditto.
ready to
Yep.
go.
Good to get out back in the woods and play on the radio.
It's been a long time for me, and I got a large bonus from Flex because we got paid. So yeah, my station's getting some upgrades.
Good, cool.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see everybody in about a month.
Okay,
Good night, everyone.
we'll see you guys.
Have a good one, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, you're welcome.